Hello fellow YouTubers, this is DVD Collector 1986 here with another video. This is my second time filming this video. I'm going to try to go through this pretty quick. I have two things to do in this video. I'm going to show you the movies I got for this month. This is the collection update for June 2022, as well as a top 30 bucket list movies that I think everyone should see in their lifetime. I'm going to do that as the second part of this video, but I'm doing it all as one. So I might say a little bit about each of these movies, but I'm going to move pretty quickly through them because the top 30 list will probably be the bigger section of this video. So let's just get into it. I got this on 4K. This is the new Batman movie with Robert Pattinson. I thought this movie was really good. Here's another new movie, X. This is the latest Ti West movie. Pretty good movie. Pretty good slasher. Pretty good horror film. I think Ti West makes some pretty good movies. Here is a movie called Splinter. This is kind of a zombie slash parasite movie. More of a parasite film, but very much in the vein of zombie films. It's actually a really good movie. So definitely check this one out if you haven't. It's called Splinter. Here's a movie I upgraded from DVD to Blu-ray. The Girl Next Door from 2004. Here's a new movie. Kind of a detective movie, Last Looks. This movie wasn't as good as I thought it was going to be, but it was still a good movie. I'm happy to have it in the collection. This is another new movie, Last Night in Soho. This is an Edgar Wright film. It was pretty good. Here's another new movie, Dog. I really enjoyed this movie, and no, this movie is not a sad movie. There's a lot of movies with dogs that end up being sad movies. This is definitely not one of them. Pretty good movie. I upgraded this from DVD to Blu-ray. This is a classic movie from my childhood, and that would be Drop Dead Fred. Really enjoy that movie. If you like courtroom dramas, I have a couple of movies here that you might want to check out if you haven't seen them. This is the remake of 12 Angry Men. This came out in 1997. Has an all-star cast. The whole movie takes place in one room. It's based on a play. And it is directed by William Friedkin, who also directed The Exorcist, the original Exorcist. So definitely check this movie out if you like courtroom dramas. It's actually pretty good. And since I was talking about that movie, I'll show you this one next. This is the Universal 100th Anniversary Collector's Series release. It's a digibook, and it's this is a movie from 1962. Like I was saying about the other movie, this is a courtroom drama. It's really good. Yes, it's an older movie, but it's really good. And that's To Kill a Mockingbird. This is the 50th anniversary edition. I got this for $8. It's in really good shape. The only thing that's wrong with it is the bottom corner there is a little smashed, but with these digibooks that tends to happen. Even the top is a little bent on the corners. That just happens with these. Otherwise it's in really good shape. The discs don't have any scratches on them at all, and like I said, I got it for $8. This is a really good release of this movie, and it is packed with special features. So if you don't own this movie and you like it and you want it with all the special features that you can get, definitely look for this digibook release. It comes with the Blu-ray and the DVD, so it's a really good movie. Next, here's a Shout Factory release of The Craft with Neve Campbell. Pretty good movie from the 90s. Here's a Digipack 4K release from a company called Second Sight, and this is for the original Dawn of the Dead. I prefer the remake over the original, which this is the original, but I do enjoy and like the 70s feel of this movie, and the fact that they shot in an actual late 1970s era mall. And I really like that because it was shot in the late 70s when malls were just getting started, you get to see all the old logos for like Sears, JCPenney's. I don't know. You know what? I don't think they had a Sears in that mall, but like you get to see how all the old store logos looked in the 70s, and they have changed a lot since then. Heck, we don't even have shopping malls really much anymore at this point. But that's one aspect of this movie I really enjoyed. These movies look amazing on 4K. You get all 3 different cuts of the movie on 4K discs, and you get a 4th disc that's a Blu-ray that's packed with feature-length documentaries, behind-the-scenes interviews, and all kinds of other interesting stuff. Really, really fun release, and I'm happy to have it in the collection. Next, we just have a couple of DVDs here, and I would have gotten the Blu-ray of this, but it was a little too expensive, and I had never seen this movie, so I took a chance, got the DVD, just to check it out. That's The Killing of a Sacred Deer. This is an A24 film, and it stars McLovin from Superbad. That's not his real name. But this is a really good movie, and it's it's a horror film for sure, but it's definitely a psychological thriller. It's a movie that you have to watch several times to really take it in and really get the gist of what the movie's about. It's a very cryptic movie. It makes you think. Not everything is spelled out on the surface with this movie. So if you're not into like a thinking movie, a movie that's going to make you think, I would pass on this. But even still, it is a great movie. It's worth a watch, and it's a really good one. But it is a movie when you're done watching it, especially the first time you watch it, you're going to be like, what did I just watch? But anyway, there's that. And this movie does not have a Blu-ray release, so obviously it doesn't have a 4K release either, so obviously the only way to get it is on DVD. So I know there's people out there that will say, well, why would anyone buy DVDs nowadays with Blu-ray and everything? And that's because there's still some movies that don't have Blu-ray releases. They're still only available on DVD. So this is And God Created Woman. This is not the original. It's directed by the same guy who directed the original from the 1950s. But this is a remake from 1988, I believe, and it stars Rebecca De Mornay. She was a very attractive actress. She still is. She was very popular in the 80s. Most people remember her from Risky Business. And she was also later in the 90s. She was in the made-for-television remake of The Shining, the miniseries that was directed by Stephen King in the 90s. She was in that, and she's been in a whole bunch of other stuff. But this is definitely a good movie that she was in the late 80s. Definitely check it out. So those are the movies I got in the mail for this month. So that's that. And the last part of the video, I wanted to do a top 30 movies, a bucket list of movies that I think everyone should see in their lifetime. Now, right off the bat, I went ahead and decided to pick from movies that I own to make this list. And number two, these are not in any particular order, and so it's not like, you know, number 30 down to 1 in that order. These are all just in random order. And the last thing I'll say before I begin is some of the titles on this list are newer movies that will surprise some people. There's some people that are going to be like, whoa, there's so many classics that he did not include on this list. Why did he include that instead of this movie and stuff like that? There's some classics on here, but there's also some more modern movies, and these have a very high rewatchability factor for me. So this is sort of my list, but if someone came up to me and said, you know, name me 30 movies that you absolutely think I should see during my lifetime, this would be the list right here. And I'll talk a little bit about certain movies and why they're on the list as I go. So let's get started. Again, I'm not going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to name them and go down the list. Okay, so first, The Breakfast Club. This is a classic John Hughes movie. Kids are in detention for the day, and there's like 5 or 6 of them. I don't remember exactly how many, but each one is a different personality that we all know from high school. You've got the jock, you've got the nerdy kid, you've got the rebel, you've got the prom queen, you've got the introvert that doesn't, that keeps to themselves. You've got all these different personalities, and then you've got the principal, the lead faculty member, and then you've even got the janitor that shows up in a few scenes. And each one of the characters in this movie has a unique personality. They're all different from one another, and that's what makes this movie so great. And like a play, this whole movie mostly takes place in the library of the school. Most of the movie. They go to a couple of different like hallways and things like that at certain parts. But for the majority of the film, most of it takes place in the library. There's a lot of other John Hughes movies I could have put on this list, but for me personally, I think The Breakfast Club is, without a doubt, John Hughes' best film. So I had to put that on the list. Next, again, this one might shock some people, but I'm going to go with Aliens. That's the second Alien movie, not the first. This was the sci-fi action movie that got me into action movies. You've got Lance Henriksen, you've got Bill Paxton, God rest his soul. You've also got Michael Biehn, and you've got a slew of other actors, and the cast was what made this movie so remarkable. It's a lot like the first, except it's more oriented towards action, and I like action movies. And unlike a lot of action movies, not too many of the characters survived to the end of the movie. And as a child, when I saw this was one of the first movies that introduced me to the concept that not all the good guys are going to survive at the end. And even though only a handful make it, actually only 4 characters survive the movie, they accomplish the mission, but they don't all survive. And that introduced an element of realism that stuck with me for the rest of my life. And that's why I like realistic action movies and war films and things like that. But Aliens. And another unique thing about Aliens is that It came out in 1986. So that movie is the same age as me. So next, I had to put this on the list. Jaws. There's a lot of shark movies out there. There's some really good ones. There's some really really bad ones. Whew. But there are some great ones, some really great ones. This is the quintessential end all be all of shark movies. I'll be honest with you. I'm not real big on shark movies, but this movie has really grown on me, and I can watch it just about any time. And if you're into shark films, and by some weird coincidence you've never seen Jaws, stop what you're doing and go watch it. There's just the movie's so quotable. There's so many memorable scenes, and it's such a well put together movie. It's just there's nothing I can say that hasn't already been said. But Jaws is definitely on the list. So next, Batman, and by that I mean the 1989 Tim Burton Batman movie starring Michael Keaton. This was the first live action feature film shown in a theater this was the first dark live action incarnation of Batman ever. The only live version of Batman you had before this was Adam West. But this was the first serious dark take on Batman, and between the director Tim Burton, the way that Michael Keaton played the character, and just the atmosphere of the movie, this was a really really good step forward for the evolution of Batman as a character and for future Batman movies. So that's definitely on the list. Here's another comic book movie. This is a comic book movie that is for people who don't like comic book movies. It's a newer movie, but I think you'll understand why it's on the list. Logan. I like the X-Men movies. I love them, actually, all of them. But Logan elevated these movies to an epic level. This wasn't just a comic book movie anymore. There wasn't like a bunch of characters and each one had to have their character moment where they show off their superpowers. There are times in this movie when you forget who Logan is, and it's like watching a movie just about a broken down dude that's taking care of his elderly father or father figure. And I'm not gonna get into it because I could get into a huge discussion about all the not hidden meanings, but all the symbolism in this movie and what makes it so great. I'm not going to do that, but I will say this. The fact that Logan, the old beat up Logan, ends up having to fight a younger clone of himself is very symbolic in this movie. And it's just a great movie. And if you don't like the rinse and repeat standard, run of the mill, by the numbers routine of all these summer blockbuster, popcorn comic book flick movies, they're all pretty much the same. If you don't like that and that's not your style, I would say definitely give Logan a watch. It's a different kind of comic book movie, and like I said, if you don't like comic book movies, this is the comic book movie for you. So, Logan. Next, Halloween 4. That might also shock some people. Oh, he didn't put the first one on the list. Without the first one, we wouldn't have any of the other Halloween movies. However, I will say that I believe Halloween 4 is where the series really found its footing. You had the return of Donald Pleasance. You had the introduction of Danielle Harris playing the character of Jamie Lloyd. You had Ellie Cornell playing Rachel. You had Bo Starr playing the sheriff, Sheriff Meeker. You had Brady. You had all these characters. Even he had a very small part, but even the preacher that picks up Donald Pleasance when he's walking down the road. You had George P. Wilbur playing Michael Myers, and arguably to me, he was one of the scariest guys. Well, not guys, but he did one of the scariest portrayals of Michael Myers. Everything in this movie for me just worked. The atmosphere on top of everything else was amazing. The score was amazing. How Michael Myers escapes, just the way they worked the whole story was great. And like I said, they just hit all the right beats for me in this movie. And more often than not, Halloween 4 is the Halloween movie that I tend to watch more than all the others. I just love it. And as far as The Mask, a lot of people that don't like this movie, they complain about The Mask. The Mask never bothered me. For some reason, I don't know why The Mask never bothered me in this. It just doesn't. And also, maybe this has something to do with it. This was the first Halloween movie I ever saw. So I'm sorry to the Halloween purists out there, but I did not start this franchise by watching the first movie. I watched the first one later. And as great as the first one is, and it is, Donald Pleasance would later, if you're familiar with the series, he's the one who would carry this series forward. And I think that his role in this series meant more than the role of any other actor who was ever in this franchise. And this was his franchise. He loved playing this character, and had he not passed away in 1995, he would have kept doing this character and making more of these films. He's the glue that held this franchise together. And he was just great. And I will just say this. I don't think that Donald Pleasance ever got the full credit that he deserved for this role. Just epically underrated. But I think in Halloween 4 is where his character and every other part of the story just found its perfect footing. And when you watch Halloween 4, it puts you in that October, fall, autumn, Halloween season feel. And the opening of the movie is just great. So I'll shut up now. I could go on and on about Halloween 4, but that movie's on the list. Next, we're going to go into some medieval territory, sort of. Braveheart. This is one of Mel Gibson's best movies. Very, very well done. Medieval warfare, swords, hammers, maces, mallets, horseback, knights, sword fights, and just amazing movie. And supposedly based on a true story. Apparently, there really was a man named William Wallace who was Scottish, and Britain was trying to, tell them what to do as a country, taking them over and trying to make them subjects, and they fought back. And this was just a great movie. It came out in 1995, and for its time, it was probably the first really gory, realistic war film. There's another movie on this list that came out 3 years later. We'll talk about that one when we get to it. But as of 1995, this was the first movie of its kind that was really, really realistic and brutal. And it's a sad movie, but it's a great one. And so Braveheart. Next, Terminator 2, T2. Say what you will about the first movie, and the third movie, not so good, and then they kind of get worse and worse as they go along. But I would say this: if someone came up to me and said, You have to eliminate all the other Terminator movies from existence, but you can only keep one. The one I would keep would be T2. I think this is Arnold Schwarzenegger's best performance. Great special effects, cutting edge for the time. They didn't have special effects like this before this movie. Very well done, amazing work. Great story, great characters. You had Robert Patrick playing the T-1000 liquid metal villain. Arnold was the good guy, which was a change from the original, which was a big surprise. Made it very interesting. And there's so many memorable quotes from this movie and memorable scenes, action sequences, and the ending of this movie was just epic. And at the refinery or wherever it was they were at, the steel mill, unforgettable scene. This movie just blew me away when I first watched it when I was younger. And I'll say this: there's women who cry watching Titanic, and that's cool. But I'll tell you this: women cried watching Titanic, which is another James Cameron movie like this one, but men cried at the end of T2. And to this day, this movie's like 31 years old now. Every time I watch it, I tear up at the end, every single time. So T2. Next, Saving Private Ryan. This was the war film that started the trend of realistic, gritty, grounded, realistic war films. I know you had movies with John Wayne in the past and all that, but I'm sorry, but these movies like Saving Private Ryan, that's as realistic as you can get on a movie screen. You could almost smell the smells of combat watching a movie like that. And if you're going to watch a war film, and if you come from a family of lineage of a family that has served in multiple wars over the decades, and it's a family tradition to serve, like it was in my family, you really do have a profound respect for movies like this because they realistically show you what war is like as best they can on a movie screen. And you didn't get that with the older films. I'm not knocking those films. I'm just saying that they were nothing like the older films could not hold a candlestick to these newer ones, starting with this film. And also movies like Braveheart that came out a couple years before that. So Saving Private Ryan, definitely. Next, Star Wars. And I'm going to put it this way. I'm counting it as one, but any of the original Star Wars trilogy films. My personal favorite is the second one, The Empire Strikes Back. But all three of those movies, amazing. I could care less for the prequels and the sequel trilogy and all the one-offs like the Solo movie and all that. No. I mean, there's people that like those. That's amazing. That's great. If you like those, awesome. But for me, just give me the original trilogy and I'm happy. So, but those, I'm going to count those as one, but that had to be on the list. So next, here's another movie, Jurassic Park. We had never seen a movie with effects like that. This came out in '93, a couple years after T2, and this is what started the revolution of CGI in movies. They had to use it obviously for some of the scenes involving dinosaurs, but they also used practical puppet effects for some of the close-up shots, and it was the perfect blend of practical effects and CGI for dinosaurs and all that in the movie. It was a perfect balance. Again, there's a lot of sequels to this movie, and I own them all. But if you backed me into a corner and said, of all those movies you have to pick one, it's always going to be the first one. There's some other ones that are decent in the franchise, and there's some that are not so good, but nothing will ever beat the first Jurassic Park. So that has to be on the list. Next, 127 Hours. This is a newer movie, came out a few years back, based on a true story. A guy went rock climbing in a canyon. He falls into a crevice in the canyon, and a big, huge rock falls in there with him. It lands on his arm. He's stuck there for several days, and ultimately, he has to make the choice to cut off his own arm. And the reason this movie is on the list is because even though it's brutal that he has to cut off his own arm, it's a movie about survival. It's a movie about the will to survive, and it's an inspirational film because even though he loses his arm, he survives, and he survived because he had the will to survive. And he almost died, but he's lucky that he made it out alive. And he survived, and he went on to have a family. And he realized later in life, if he had just stayed there and died, which he could have done, he would have missed out on so many things, like having a family and kids and things like that. It's a very inspirational movie. Some parts are hard to watch, but overall, it's a great movie, and I think everyone should see it. It's really good. And another movie that's a war movie that I put on this list, 1917. This is one of the most realistic movies about the First World War that I've ever seen in my life. And one of the things that's so great about it is the fact that the entire movie is shot as one continuous, solid, single camera shot. There's no cuts. So it just follows a couple of the main characters from the trench that they get out of all the way across no man's land, which is the area between trenches on both sides. So you got your guys in one trench, and then the enemy on the other side, and that area in between is called no man's land because there's nowhere to hide. But the camera follows this pair of characters from the very beginning of the movie to the end, and there's no cuts at all in the whole movie. Amazingly done, amazing special effects. Like I said, one of the greatest movies about World War One that I've ever seen in my life. So that had to be on the list. Next, Dawn of the Dead, the remake from 2004. The original is great, but the problem I have with the original is it's a little too preachy. It's a commentary on consumerism, and George Romero was trying to say how people are like zombies going to the mall. Even when they're dead, they still remember to go to the mall. And again, it's just a big commentary about American consumerism. And it was good for its day, but what I like about the remake is it's the same story. They get trapped in the mall, there's zombies outside, and they have to survive in the mall. But the remake did not harp on the consumerism subliminal message that the original did, and that's why I give the edge to the remake. And not only that, it's just a great zombie movie. So Dawn of the Dead from 2004. Another movie I want to mention is First Blood. This is the first Rambo movie, and it's a movie, it's an action movie. He survives in the wilderness, evading capture, and all that. And he has to go through a cave at one point, and there's a lot of things that happen in this movie. But ultimately, this movie is a metaphor for PTSD, and PTSD is real, and there's a lot of veterans who have it. And this movie is a love letter to veterans, not just from Vietnam, but all wars who suffer from PTSD. And it's a great movie, and I think everyone should see it. Um, and it's also a really good Sylvester Stallone movie, one of his best. So, speaking of Sylvester Stallone, here's another movie, Rocky Balboa, and I'm not talking about the first Rocky. This is going to surprise some people. I'm talking about Rocky Six, the sixth movie in the franchise. I find this one extremely inspirational, and there is, and I'm paraphrasing and probably not saying this exactly the way he said it in the movie, but one of the best quotes in Rocky Balboa is when he says to his son, "Don't walk around pointing at people, blaming them for your shortcomings in life, or blaming them for why you're not where you want to be." And then he says something along the lines of, "Nothing is ever going to hit you as hard as life does, but it's not about getting hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep getting up and keep moving forward." Something along those lines. One of the most inspirational speeches I've ever heard in a movie, and that's why I had to put this movie on the list. It's a great movie. And it just happens to be the sixth movie in the Rocky franchise, but it's great. Next, Superman, the original Christopher Reeve Superman movie. Yes, it's dated. When he flies around, you can tell it's a projection screen, and he's wearing like blue spandex, and the movie is a bit dated. But without this movie, we would not have movies like we have today, like the Man of Steel remake and the whole Dawn of Justice, which has something to do with Batman as well. But without this original Superman movie, we wouldn't have movies like Man of Steel and all that. And it is a bit dated. It's got Margot Kidder in it. It's got Gene Hackman, like I said, Christopher Reeve, and I'm sure I'm forgetting a few actors. But it's a very well done movie for the time that it came out. And like I said, without it, we wouldn't have. There's no way we would have movies like Man of Steel without it. So I had to put it on the list. Also, I mentioned courtroom drama movies earlier in the video. Here's another one, Rules of Engagement. It's a courtroom drama, but it deals with the military and how the military deals with court cases and their proceedings and how they handle that kind of stuff. And it stars Samuel L. Jackson and Tommy Lee Jones, and this is one of the best courtroom drama movies I have ever seen. Sadly, there's no Blu-ray release for it in the United States yet. I hope someday it gets a Blu-ray release, because this is definitely a movie that deserves it. But it is a great military movie and courtroom drama. It's good. Like I said, if you like To Kill a Mockingbird, 12 Angry Men, movies like that, definitely give Rules of Engagement a watch. It's a great movie. So next, we're going to go into sort of fictionalized history, per se, and that is a movie called Bubba Hotep. There's a long way to explain it, and there's a short way. I'll say it the short way. Essentially, it is an elderly Elvis who happens to not be dead. He's still alive, but he's in a nursing home. He injured his hip, and the way they explain it is that he swapped identities with an Elvis impersonator, and so he's not dead. He ends up in a nursing home in Texas, and he has a friend who lives in a different room in the nursing home, who is played by Ozzie Davis. And Ozzie Davis, his character is a you could say senile, crazy old man that thinks that he's JFK, John F. Kennedy. As crazy as that sounds, it gets even more crazy. On top of that, you have this ancient mummy that sneaks into the nursing home at night and sucks out the souls of the elderly residents at this nursing home. How the mummy takes their souls out, you'll have to watch the movie to find that out. It's a crazy movie. It's when you hear what it's about, it's like, whoa, that's crazy. It doesn't make any sense. I bet that movie is stupid. But if you actually take the time to watch the movie, it's funny, it's sad, it's dramatic. It's got a little bit of everything in it. It's a mixed bag, but it also has heart. And it's a movie that will make you tear up at the end. It's a great movie, but it's not a movie I think enough people know about. Most people, this movie just slipped right under the radar. And every person that I've introduced to this movie ended up loving it. So this movie had to be on the list. Next, got to have a little Die Hard in here. Die Hard with a Vengeance. This is the third Die Hard movie. Love it. It's a great. Essentially, it's a buddy cop movie. Although one of the characters is not a cop, but at its core, it's a buddy cop movie, and it's got Bruce Willis as John McClane, obviously, and he's running around doing what this bad guy named Simon tells him what to do. But the other element of the story is that there's this Samaritan that teams up with Bruce Willis unwillingly, and the banter between the Samaritan and Bruce Willis throughout the whole movie, the way they interact and the way they insult each other, and just the things that they say to each other, it makes the movie hilarious and watchable. And the Samaritan is played by Samuel L. Jackson. I think this is the best Die Hard movie. I think everyone should see this movie, definitely, and that's why it's on the list. It's a great movie. It's unfortunate what happened to Bruce Willis. He's got some kind of brain disease now, and I heard that he stepped away from acting. I'm sorry, brother. You made some really good movies, and at least we have, even though he's not making movies anymore, at least we have all these movies that he made before that we can still go back and watch. But Die Hard with a Vengeance definitely deserves to be on the list. So next, I had to include one of these, and I included Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. I like all the Indiana Jones movies, but this one, which is the third movie in the original three movies, to me is my favorite. You've got Harrison Ford, you've got Sean Connery, and just a bunch of really interesting, well-rounded characters. It's a good adventure story, and it's a very period-driven movie. Like, it takes place in the 1930s, I think, 30s or 40s, and they did a very good job of recreating that era. So when you watch it, it feels like, yeah, they're in that era. And I just love that movie. They're all good, but this one is the best. So Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. Here's another movie that's part of a franchise, the original Back to the Future. All three movies are great, but the first one was the best. You've got Marty McFly, you've got Doc Brown, you've got the DeLorean, and he travels back in time, and he ends up meeting and interacting with his parents when they were his age, before he was born, in the past, because he goes back to the past, goes into the past, and then because he interacts with certain people and certain things happen, it affects whether or not he will exist in the future. So he basically screws up the timeline, and then he has to hustle to try to fix what he messed up so that he can ensure that he'll exist in the present once he returns to it. And he does his best to do just that, but in the end, he fixes most of it. But when he goes back to the future, get it? Or in this case, the present day, which is 1985, he fixes most of the mistakes he did, the stuff he messed up in the past. He fixes most of it, but you still notice little things that aren't quite what they were when he first left 1985 to go to the past. So he didn't get everything exactly right, and it's a cautionary tale about why people, even if they had the ability to travel back in time and change things, it's a cautionary tale of exactly why you shouldn't do that. And it was the first movie of the franchise, and it's just an amazing popcorn movie. So obviously that had to be on the list. Next, this is another war movie called Lone Survivor. As sad and tragic as this movie is, it's a very inspirational movie. It's about four Navy SEALs who get surrounded by bad guys on a mission in Afghanistan, and they basically fight to the last man, and they use up all their ammunition. I mean, they fight as best they can, but out of the four, only one guy survives, and he happens to be played by Mark Wahlberg in the movie. But one guy survives, and then to make it worse, more tragic, two Chinook helicopters come full of other Navy SEALs to try to attempt a rescue mission. And not only do the three of the four guys on the ground die, but one of the Chinooks gets shot down by an RPG, and there's like I don't remember how many guys were in the Chinook, but there was a bunch, one of which was the commanding officer of the four-man team on the ground, and all the guys in the Chinook die. And so the movie's called Lone Survivor because this one guy, inevitably he survives. He gets to go home very, very injured. He almost died. Matter of fact, when they got him to the tarmac back at base, he actually died on the tarmac, and they resuscitated him. But a whole bunch of his own fellow Navy SEALs and other military buddies had to die essentially to get him home, and that's why the movie's called Lone Survivor. And it's based on a true story. It is one of the most harrowing, brutal, in-your-face war films you'll ever see. And again, this is why I prefer modern, realistic war films. I mean, because they show you like it is. And it was just a great movie. And that's why it's on the list. And again, this is a movie definitely I think everyone in their lifetime should see it at least once. So next, there's a lot of documentaries that I could have put on the list, but I narrowed it down to one. And this is not an actual documentary. It's more of a docudrama, but it's called Saving the Titanic. This was originally a PBS special, and I believe it was filmed in Ireland, if I'm not mistaken. Most of the actors are Irish, which is very fitting because this movie, or I'll just call it a movie, but it's a docudrama, is, when you hear about the Titanic, you hear about the passengers and crew that were on deck, lowering lifeboats, and you hear about the guys who operated the Marconi wireless radio, and the captain saying, women and children only. Everybody knows the big parts of the Titanic tragedy that everybody knows. but the one and those people deserve to be remembered and recognized for what they did during this tragic event. They deserve every bit of it. But there's another side to the story that is very seldom told, and that's why I put this documentary or this docudrama on the list. And this movie is about the men who worked below decks, the stokers, the firemen, the guys who ran the boiler room and kept the electricity running. There were a lot of things on the Titanic that were steam powered. So without the stokers and the guys working below, running making steam for the ship, there's a lot of things that would not have been able to happen had those guys not stayed at their posts and did what they did. And in this movie, I don't know if some people knew this or not, but some of the lifeboat davits and equipment that was used to lower the lifeboats, some of it was steam powered. So without steam, they would have never been able to use that equipment. And it's because these guys chose to stay below knowing that they would all die, that they are the ones who, ultimately the Titanic sank. But if these men had not done what they did, there's no way the Titanic would have stayed afloat for nearly 2 hours and 40 minutes. If it wasn't for what these men did, the ship would have sank a lot sooner. And because they kept the steam power going and they kept the the electricity on, they by keeping the electricity on, they helped people be able to find their way to the upper decks so that they could escape in lifeboats. These are the unsung heroes of the Titanic. And without these men doing what they did, I tell you right now, a lot less people would have survived. And I'm glad that someone finally made a movie about this, because this is a story concerning the Titanic that you don't hear that many people talk about. And for those of you who think that the Titanic James Cameron movie is like really sad and like dramatic and all that, well, it's a good romance chick flick, but I'll tell you right now, Jack and Rose in that movie, they're fictional characters. They were made up for the movie. However, all the characters in this movie were based on real people. They used the real names, that these are real people, and this is what they really did. And these were the true unsung heroes of the Titanic. And something interesting, the Titanic developed, I believe, a list, which means it, as it started to sink, it started to lean to one side, which happens a lot when ships sink. Now, the interesting thing about the Titanic was, even though it had a list, the list didn't get really pronounced and really bad until right near the end of the sinking. But for the majority of the sinking, the list was not that bad. And the reason why is because on top of keeping the electricity running and keeping steam going for all the things on the Titanic to keep running while they were offloading passengers in lifeboats, the men below were also using pumps, bilge pumps, to pump seawater from one side of the ship to the other to try to balance it out. And that's what kept the ship from listing too far to one side or the other. I mean, towards the end, it got a pretty pronounced list because that was right before the final plunge. But for the majority of the sinking, the boat maintained a pretty even balance. It never, even when it listed towards the end, big time, it still never capsized. It never flipped upside down or anything. That's why when you look at footage of the Titanic on the ocean floor today, it's still sitting upright. And the reason that ship didn't list is because those guys below, they kept the electricity going, they kept all the steam going, and they used bilge pumps to move water from one side of the ship to the other to try to balance it out. These guys did so much, and they really are the unsung heroes of the Titanic. I'm telling you. And once you see this docudrama, you'll never forget it. It's that good. So I had to put it on the list. I know I talked for a while about that, but I'm very passionate about the Titanic. I know a lot of things about it, and that is definitely one of the best movies about the Titanic you'll ever see. Sadly, the DVD is very much out of print. It's hard to find, but if you can find it and find it for a good deal, definitely pick it up and watch it. It's a great docudrama. So next is a horror film that I don't hear very many people talk about. It's called Dead End. This stars an actor named Ray Wise. This is a movie that really scared me when I first watched it. I've seen a lot of horror films because I love horror films, but so I rarely find horror films that really shake me to my core. This was definitely one of them. It's essentially, it takes place during on Christmas Eve. There's a family driving to visit out of town relatives, and they get into a near collision with another vehicle, and after that is when things get really weird. They keep driving, and no matter where they go, they keep going in circles. No matter if they go back the way they came, go another direction, go left, go right, keep going forward. No matter what, they keep passing by this. There's this cabin that they keep passing by, and it's just like they're in this continuous loop. And I don't want to ruin the ending for anybody, but you know, a lot of times these horror films are very predictable. This is one instance where it wasn't predictable, at least to me. I kind of started to catch on towards the end, but when it was finally all revealed, it really shocked me and surprised me, and it's one of the better horror films I've seen in a long time. And it's one of those movies when it's over and you have to process. They tell you, you figure out what happens by the end of the movie. You figure it out, but then afterward you think about it for a few days and you're like, that was a crazy ending. And then everything else that happened in the movie before that makes sense once you understand what happened at the end. Like I said, I'm being careful how I word it because I don't want to ruin it. I want people to go into this the same way I did, not knowing anything about the ending or anything. Just, it's a great movie. And it's a horror film, and it's got really good atmosphere. If you like spooky atmosphere movies, definitely watch it. And one other thing I'll say real quick is that the whole time while they're driving and they keep passing by this cabin over and over, and they never seem to get anywhere, and they keep going in a loop, essentially, no matter what direction they go, all the while there's a hearse following them. So that's a very eerie movie. Next is a space movie called Gravity. This is probably one of the most realistic space movies I've ever seen. In case y'all didn't know, there's no sound in space because there's no oxygen. The only way there is sound is if there's an atmosphere with oxygen. So like when they're outside floating around doing a spacewalk, there's not much sound except for what they say on their comms inside their suits. And this movie came out a few years ago, and sadly it didn't get much in the way of awards at the Academy Awards and the Oscars and all that. This movie is definitely underrated. It deserves a lot more credit than people give it. And it stars George Clooney and Sandra Bullock. And I'll just say this, it is one of the best space movies I have ever seen. Definitely watch this movie when you get a chance. Next is another horror film that really scared me. It's a more recent movie called It Follows. I'm not going to get into the meaning of the movie because there's a lot of different ways people can interpret it. But the atmosphere and the music really got to me and scared me and made this movie have a lasting effect on me. This is definitely a movie that I watch every October, and I could watch it any time of the year, and no matter what, it always scares me. Just imagine that there's this thing that follows you around. It walks really slow, but it is always following you, and it will not stop until it gets you. Very, very eerie movie. But I highly recommend it, and that's why it had to be on the list. Next is a character study type movie called The Last Castle with Robert Redford. Robert Redford's a 3-star general that gets thrown in a military prison for doing something kind of bad. You'll have to watch the movie to find out what he did exactly. But while he's there, James Gandolfini is the warden. He's a colonel, but he's the warden of the prison. And Robert Redford gets on his bad side. And so the whole movie, it's a battle of wills between Robert Redford and James Gandolfini's character. And it's a character piece. It's about, you may not like where you are in a certain situation, but God puts you in certain places at certain times for certain reasons. And you just have to see the movie to really understand exactly what I'm saying. But rest assured, this is a great character piece. It's a character-driven movie, and it's got a really good story. And it's a prison movie, like Shawshank Redemption or The Green Mile, movies like that, except it's a military prison. But it is a very well done movie, and it's one of Robert Redford's best films. Next is another documentary called Terror in the Isles. This is one of the original horror documentaries where they show clips from horror films, from different horror films throughout the documentary. And the coolest thing about it is it's hosted by Donald Pleasance. He narrates it and everything, and it also is hosted by and narrated by Nancy Allen, who played Lewis in the RoboCop movies. This is a great documentary all about horror films from mostly the 70s and the 80s. And they talk about some older horror films too, from like the 60s and the 50s. Very well done. It's an older one, but it's great. And it'll introduce you to some horror films that maybe you haven't heard of before or ever seen. Definitely check it out. And lastly, another war film I'd like to mention is the movie Fury. I would argue that this movie is even better than Saving Private Ryan. Saving Private Ryan is about the D-Day invasion. It's a grand, big scoping, all-encompassing movie with a lot of characters. This movie is about 5 or 6 guys that are in a tank. They're a tank crew, and they go on this mission, and the entire movie takes place over one day, and the tracks get blown off their tank at the end of the movie. They can still shoot the cannon and everything, except they can't move the tank. But they're right in the middle of this intersection, and the enemy is coming down the road. And so they basically, at the end of the movie, they all just, they fight. And there's this huge, huge battle at the end of the movie. And when it's all said and done, it's just raw and brutal and nasty, and like I said, it's better than Saving Private Ryan because this whole movie takes place over 24 hours. You really get to know all the characters as the movie goes on. So at the end, when the characters start to die, you really feel it because you got to really know these characters from the beginning of the movie and on, and you care about them and you don't want them to die. But unfortunately, that's not how war is, and it's brutal and it's nasty. And this movie is a perfect example of that. And at the beginning of the movie, one of the tank crew is already dead. So this new guy comes in, a replacement, and of course the other crew don't like him because he's new, and they're like, you don't know what you're doing, you're stupid. The guy that you're replacing was so much better than you, blah blah blah. But by the end of the movie, they end up accepting him in to their little group. He accepts them, they become friends, and they give him a nickname and everything. But by the end of the movie, the new guy is the only one who survives. Every other person in the tank dies. And until you see this movie, there's nothing I can say that's going to justify just how good this movie is. It's realistic, it's sad, it's dramatic, and it stars, it's got Brad Pitt, it's got John Barenthal, it's got a whole bunch of actors in it. And you fall in love with these characters. You don't want them to die. You want them all to live. But it's a realistic war film, and it's really, really sad at the end. But it's a movie about heroism, and I can't tell you how many people I've heard that have talked about this movie that have said, oh, that movie's, BS, because there's no way that 5 guys could fight off that many enemy soldiers in the dark and lasted that long and taken out that many of the enemy, and that's unrealistic, and it's just heightened reality. Like, they just totally tear this movie down, and I would argue that it's actually very realistic, because there was a man in World War II named Audie Murphy who essentially did the same thing that these guys did with this tank. He did it for real in World War II, only he did it by himself. He had a radio, of course, so he called in some air support, stuff like that, which they didn't have that in the movie. But aside from having a radio and calling in some air support, essentially Audie Murphy did exactly what these guys did at the end of the movie, only he did it for real, and he did it by himself. So anyone that tells you that this movie is unrealistic and is complete BS, don't listen to them, because just go look at the story of Audie Murphy. Audie Murphy's story is even crazier than what happened to these guys. Except Audie Murphy's story actually is true, and it happened. So don't listen to the naysayers that tell you that this movie is not that good, because it is. But that is the end of the list. It was a long one. I'm sorry this video is over an hour long at this point, but I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you got something out of this list of movies, this bucket list of 30 movies I mentioned. I hope you guys enjoyed seeing the movies that I got this month. Thank you for watching the video if you made it this far, and I will see you guys on the next video. Until then, take care of yourselves, and I will talk to you guys later. Thanks for watching.